Welcome to Home Hive. My name is Kristen. I am here with Jennifer Cortez and Julie from A Cleaner Space. So, hi Julie, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing great. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
So, Julie, let's dive right into it. So, your business, what's the background? How and why did you become an organizer?
Well, I think it's in my DNA, first of all. I've been decluttering and organizing for people for probably close to 40 years. My first job was my high school teacher, French teacher, and I cleared her desk with her permission back in the day when you were allowed to go into your teacher's office. And it wasn't so much the process that I remember, it was her reaction when she came back and saw that she had a clear desk. And it just made me feel so good and accomplished and proud. And I still have that feeling when I work with clients, when they see their space for the first time.
Wow. Yeah.
Decluttered. Yeah.
Yeah. I could only imagine just like the freedom that has, just, I think that we can easily begin to operate out of a space that, collects more and more and more. And I think that then, as quickly as we can begin, just accommodating all that extra stuff, if you will, you can almost easily forget then what it looked like prior and just almost like the freedom it may have with kind of letting some of that other stuff go.
Absolutely. And I do think people forget, and it also becomes overwhelming to try to declutter and organize things. And so it kind of, people put up a roadblock and they can't proceed on their own sometimes. And that's where a professional organizer would come in and help that person make the choices to let go of things.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, especially in our culture, we collect a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think you almost collect too much stuff to the point where it's hard to even figure out where to start to sort of declutter that. So it's great that there's a professional out there who can help you with that process, because it is a big process. It
can be for some people to overcome that fear of letting go of things, because I do think there's some sort of fear, maybe a possible regret at letting things go. And so that all plays into decluttering and exactly what to let go of. It's hard sometimes for people.
Yeah. So what are the biggest benefits you see of using a professional organizer such as yourself?
Probably the number one is that it goes really quickly than working on your own, because when you have someone else and you're paying someone else, there's a certain amount of accountability there, and you can't get distracted. You can't go look at Facebook or go garden or leave the house because you've had this person, trying to help you declutter. So I think accountability is probably the number one reason to have a professional organizer, but also there's all kinds of decisions that have to be made, especially if you're in a space that has a lot of stuff. And sometimes it takes a fresh perspective with a new set of eyes to go, well, how often do you use that? And really ask some hard questions. And also, because I'm a neutral person, there's no emotional attachment or guilt or shame or none of that. I'm just a person trying to help you. So it's not like a relative or a friend coming in and saying, hey, you should get rid of that stuff, because then automatically we kind of push back on those suggestions, even if they're well-intended. We tend to not want to take advice from people that we love. I don't know why that is, but it just goes a lot smoother when there's someone like me that's a neutral person to just ask a simple question, and then things leave the house. It's amazing.
That's great. I imagine you also have a system down as well that helps people probably through the process too, right?
Sure, I have my system, but every situation is unique. Of course, everybody has their items that are precious to them, and like a ranking of things that are important, and that has to be respected. And so it's never my job to come in and tell someone else how to live and what their house should look like. But if you're having trouble finding your car keys on a regular basis, or your important documents, or you're just tired of not having a clear counter, but you can't seem to move forward, then might be a good time to call in a professional organizer to help you with those things.
Well, it's interesting because, as you share all that, it definitely sounds like there is a psychology also that's tied into the organizational piece of it, but just it as a whole, the way that if it's the way we collect stuff, the way the process or not, like maybe it's the holdup, why garages can easily become, the entire garage itself can easily just become an additional storage space, or unused bedrooms, or just, as there's so many, different things. I know that, in my own life, my husband lost his mom a couple of years ago. And so in one of our spare bedrooms, the majority of that content is stuff from the past. So from a psychological standpoint, it has a lot of heavy memories, which is probably why it's still in boxes, and really not dealt with. And that's just, that's one component to it. I could only imagine, this can happen, interestingly enough, in all spaces of your home, and even, property in itself. You can have abandoned items left throughout the property.
Absolutely.
Not within the home. So yeah, I could imagine that, when any client that you're meeting with, each situation is so different, yet your process is probably refined, semi-standardized as you're going in. It's just going to look different, with each person's, really their story.
Yes. So each person is different, and each situation is unique, but I do have an overall approach to handling clutter. And that is to first talk with the client and see what their goals are. And of course, every goal is different, small to large, organizing a little cabinet all the way to a whole house and everything in between. I usually start by trying to focus on one area that's really bothering a person, that's not working. Like, it's just, they can't get dressed in the morning because they can't find their business clothes because it's in the bottom of a pile of clothes or something like that. And then just, okay, so we're going to work in the closet, and then to categorize things. It's really important to gather everything you have in that one category, say clothes or office supplies, and then work from there and just take little bite-sized pieces. Let's concentrate on shirts, and then declutter as we go on. And clothes are kind of hard, and it's time consuming because you need to try them on, in my opinion, to really get a belief of how they feel on you. It's not just holding up something on a hanger. That's too easy to put back in your closet, but trying it on, seeing if it fits well, if you feel good, etc., etc. So that goes for every space in your house, from your kitchen to your office to the garage, which is just a dumping ground for anything that you don't know where belongs in your house. It's just universal. I see it all the time, and it happens here at our house. My husband's always like, what happened to our garage? But it's just a place that it's like a magnet for things that you don't know where they go. So you're absolutely right, Jennifer, that the garage it just accumulates stuff.
Yeah, it can be an easy repository, if you will, I guess.
Yes.
So actually, it's speaking about garages and different spaces. A lot of what we, talk about here on Home Hive is also about a different type of living space, which is an ADU, so an accessory dwelling unit. Yes. And so, as an organizer, you provide services of, organizational services. Really, obviously, dependent on what the client may need, whether it's specific to a room or, their entire home. But, talking about ADUs are generally smaller in size, if you will. So from an organizational perspective, whether you're going into an organizational project with a client at the beginning part as they're moving into an ADU, it can be obviously just as beneficial and meeting with that client a year or two down the road and them living or, renting out living in that ADU. So what does it look like in organizing for a tiny space such as an ADU?
Well, first and foremost, massive decluttering if you happen to have a lot. And like you were saying earlier, in our culture, we like to have things. I mean, it's kind of a status symbol, especially for older generations. It's changing now, but we tend to have a lot of things that since I've had my business for 7 years now, I've seen that we don't need all of them. We actually need kind of a fraction of what we have. And so for an ADU, it's got to be really culled down to the essentials and finding things that serve multiple purposes are even more essential in a tiny space. And organization, I really think that's the key, because everything needs a place, that saying, everything in its place. That's really true of a tinier space, more so than any other situation.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. I actually live in my ADU, and I definitely, you definitely got to pare down a lot, and you got to kind of become unique with where you store things. But I love that you can help both people, both the people who are emptying out their garage to turn it into an ADU, and then you can also help the person who's moving into an ADU. Because oftentimes we have a lot of people who have elderly family members or something like that who are moving into their ADU so they can be closer to family, so they can take care of them. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be able to have somebody to be able to go to help that person move into a smaller space, because it is very challenging, especially if you've been living in your home for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yes, I work with clients like that, and I've been lucky enough to work with clients from age 10, their parent was in the house, but age 10 all the way into their 80s. Wow. And of course, the older clients are downsizing. They're moving from their 2,500, 3,000 plus square foot house to maybe a retirement community, or I haven't yet worked with someone, older couple who's downsizing to an ADU, but hopefully soon I will. Yeah. And it's very challenging, because when you've lived in one space for, like you were saying, Kristen, for 30, 40, 50 years, there's a lot of attachments, but physically it's impossible to bring everything. And that's where I come in and compassionately, because these are hard decisions. These are, memories that they've built up. They've spent money on these items, but I come in and I just talk to people, talk them through the process and just how to let go of things. Do you really need, you're moving to a community that provides meals. So you can really downsize your kitchen. You don't necessarily need that bundt pan anymore, just silly things like that. But the whole process just to get them down to what they need, use, and love. I say that a lot, need, use, and love. Because once you have those three things, everything else can just go and leave your space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're spot on with all of these comments. I think it's extremely important, and it's an emotional process that people go through. And I think being able to have somebody who's a neutral party is so beneficial, because if it's an emotional experience and they're being judged for their clutter or whatnot, or what someone might consider clutter, or versus someone who considers them memories and holds on to them. It's great to be able to have somebody who can help guide you through the process, whether you're clearing out your space or moving into a space, which is perfect for ADUs, since a lot of people convert their garages into ADUs. And then, of course, we have people who move into the ADU afterwards. So it's great to be able to have somebody who can help both sides. You can help somebody move out, and you can help somebody move in. So.
And I love to do both.
Yeah, that's so great. All right. So what does the process look like to get started with you?
Well, a phone call or a text, or on my social media, people reach out to me all different ways. I usually have a little phone conversation. I do a free consultation so people know more about me. They can see me, because a lot of time there's some embarrassment in having someone like a stranger like me come into someone's space. So I offer that, and I'll meet them outside their home if that's what they would like. And once that process is done, then we set up a time to meet and start. And it's really all about just starting, not any particular place, not in any particular way, just to begin. And then there's sometimes a lot of angst in the beginning, but then when they see the process rolling and they see progress, they see maybe it's just a little clear space, then the nerves come down. It's more calming. There's not so much stress and angst. And then pretty soon we're just rolling. We're just getting rid of stuff, and they are so happy. I don't want anyone to have regret, ever. And so far in 7 years, I've never had anyone go, "Oh, you made me throw that spatula away. I'm really mad at you, Julie." So I feel like I do my due diligence by asking people what they really want. If there's things they're holding on to for their children, I'm the voice of reason, and I will most likely say, "Have you asked your kids?" Yes, but they're going to one day. I'll probably lovingly say, "No, they're not. You've asked your kids, they're adults, they have their own stuff, their own life. So let's not burden them with all this stuff. Let's find someone who would really appreciate it out there in the world, and let it have another life, and take a tax write-off too. Anything to get to continue the process of clearing clutter, I will do, including stand on my head if I could do that. So I will do just about anything.
Well, Julie, really dive in almost to the next episode. We could almost, maybe that's actually what we should do is, in a future episode, maybe look at a space. We looked at an ADU. There's so much to talk about. There's, from an organizational perspective, it's important knowing from a process standpoint, it doesn't need to be when you've collected and you're staring at the stuff in your face, but it's also maybe going into a new space, such as an ADU, is how can you optimally organize it in advance? And, whatever part of your process may be, if there's also just some advice in providing to your clients, this is how to almost live with more intentionality, both in organizing, but in knowing whether it's what you're buying, what you're collecting, what you're saving, so that, at least you're thinking about it most likely, hopefully more in advance than 5, 10, 20 years down the road, and you go and you open up your garage and there's no more space for that next box to put it in.
Exactly. Intention. That's a good point. Also, from an environmental standpoint, you're not buying so much stuff to just sit around your house. Financially, it's a good decision not to accumulate so much. So there's a lot of reasons to not have so much stuff and space. And this ADU, it's such a cool thing that you can make money by having this little dwelling on your property. We just went through with you guys recently, and it's fascinating to see another purpose in your home, on your property. So
of space that you already have, whether it's on your, whether it's a space that could be renovated, or if it's space on your property that you could actually accommodate a new build for an ADU. Is just the way that we look at space. Space can be repurposed and reutilized, reorganized in so many different ways. So, I mean,
I believe it. The one I can see people going, oh, my garage, what am I going to do with all that stuff that's stored in there? And I'm not a big fan of storage units, because mostly it's just a delayed decision on stuff. You're just packing that in there, plus the financial costs. I'm all about rolling up the sleeves and digging in and really making decisions on all those items in your garage. For instance, just put your hands on them and make sure that they're really, really what you want in your life. Because a lot of times they just aren't. There's old paint cans and, duplicates of tools, and all kinds of. Garages are fascinating. They're like a little time capsule of people's lives in there. And cords like that go to phones that we had in the 80s, all kinds of random stuff. And so if anybody's thinking of doing an ADU and in their garage, I would bet that you can let go of, I don't know, 50, 60, 70%. And then let's get creative with the other stuff that needs to leave that space. When you guys come in to build the ADU, I am an expert at finding little voids all around the house where you can tuck things away and free up a space. And in this particular case, a garage. It's totally doable and possible. Yes.
I mean, Julie, super, super well said. I mean, whether, if someone's looking at creating that type of ADU project, is interested in it, I mean, they could easily disqualify themselves for, not having this space per se, if you will, the actual space that can be renovated into an ADU or, a new space on their property. So, in saying that, and I'm glad that you had brought that up, it's not even just, the space that they may have, but what could be in the space right now as, their, in-home storage unit, if you will, for stuff that maybe hasn't been looked at or dealt with in, years or decades. But it's also the other part is your ability and service to be able to then go and find alternate spaces and really allowing them to really optimize how a space is utilized and organized. So, in us wrapping up our conversation today, Julie, if people want to reach out to you, what's your contact information? Where can they find you on the web, social media? How can people reach out to you?
So my business is A Cleaner Space, and my website is A Cleaner Space SD for San Diego.com. That's easy. And then that will take you to my social media, which is full of before and after pictures of my clients, and recently of my own home, which has our garage in it, by the way, because that was on the to-do list when COVID happened. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram at A Cleaner Space SD. And my phone number's on my website and my social media. Even if you just have a question of how the process works, you can call me, and no obligation whatsoever. Just call me and pick my brain, and I'm happy to share my suggestions, ideas, thoughts with you. That's totally fine. And you might get some inspiration from my social media with the before and after pictures. I basically use it as a portfolio. It doesn't have anybody else's work on there, just mine. And I love what I do. It's my passion. There's no judging for me. That's for other people if they want to do it. But I just want to really help people move forward in their space, whatever they want, whatever their goal is. Like I said before, small or large, just ADU, I want to make it happen. And I'm very goal oriented, and I want to make it happen for you.
Well, Julie, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Home Hive. To our audience, I don't think there's a better time actually to reach out to Julie and just learn more about her business and her services. I mean, there's no better time to get organized, especially as we're coming out of what we anticipate is the tail end of COVID-19. Also, I mean, we've been, just from a contextual standpoint, we've been in our, in shooting this in mid 2020 of when this is being recorded. We've all been in our living spaces for a fair share of time by this point. And, whether you're watching this in a year from now or whether you're watching this on the day that we release it, you understand. We've all been in this really unique situation. And, during that situation, you've probably assessed more stuff in your home than normal. And so maybe it's easy for you to know where you need her type of services, or maybe it's a project that kind of seems a little further out, whether you're, moving, whether you're downsizing, or whether you're, interested in ADU. There's really no better time to reach out to Julie and learn how, she could provide you with services that can help you to reach those goals sooner.
If I could say something about moving, anyone thinking about moving, it's so much better to declutter before you move, because otherwise you're paying packers and movers, or if you're doing it yourself, more packing, more energy, more cost. So just either, if it's with me, on your own, someone else, really important to declutter before you move, if you have the time.
Especially if you're moving into an ADU like I did.
Yes.
Very good point. Love it, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.